Hello and Guru Scott. This is part 8 of our Stillen Supercharger install. We've made almost zero progress in 2 days. First of all, let me tell you what we have done. We did leak check the Stillen unit up here to make sure that there was no leaks, because when I do put coolant in, I don't want them leaking into my engine. I'm sure they did that at the factory, but I wanted to make sure. So that's good. I did install a couple of Adele clamps here, went down and got those in the hardware. And this hose, we finished routing it over to the other side of the engine cooling return. And that's all done. Perfect, no problems there at all. The problem still is with the transmission cooler relocation. We had tons of problems with it. We'll go underneath and show you some of the issues we had, and maybe we can show you some from the top side. First of all, I'll just speak about it. Our transmission unit really didn't fit, so we had to make some adjustments to the bracket. That wasn't a huge deal, but it was time consuming. But then Stillen said to make a loop around with the existing hose and tie it into your transmission cooler. The problem was ours is somehow different, and the way it's situated is different. And so we had to go buy a long brand new transmission hose and chop it and use a piece to go in there. And I'll show you how we made it look, and it came out really first class, but definitely Stillen didn't cover it. And you do have to use transmission hose on that. The other thing is, Stillen says to cut a hole here and run a line here. Well, the problem is behind it is a piece of the air conditioner. I think it's either the receiver dryer or something. I haven't identified it yet. But anyway, it's sitting right behind this panel. So we're going to have to try to run the hose between it and the metal structure here of the body. We'll get that done, but that also meant a lot of modifications to the pump, which we're still working on installing. And that is another ordeal. The brackets for that weren't right, so we had to do some work with that. So first of all, we'll get some light on this over here, and I'll show you what we did from the top on installing the hose for the cooler. I'm not sure if you can see, but the bottom transmission area, there's a line that comes from the car body that's supposed to feed around, and that's the one that makes a 180-degree turn. You'll see it has double hose clamps on it. We had to put the new line there and double hose clamp it, and then we looped it around inside, and we'll show you that from underneath here in a second. Okay, so where the transmission cooler line is on the bottom, we made a large radius bend so it wouldn't kink, and then we tied it to a cooling line that sits in front of the radiator. So that was kind of a hard thing to do because there's no area to work up in there, and we didn't want to reassemble or disassemble stuff, but we did get it done. And so that all now is first class. Now we can finally install the bottom plastic skid plate. We tried to put it on earlier and we found it was blocked because we had tried to route the old hose, and it was a mess. Don't want to get into it too much, except we spent a lot of time trying to re-engineer the design, and I think Stillen should have done a much better job on this, and I'm pretty disappointed in this because it took about 6 hours so far. But I think we have it now. So also with the transmission cooler only having 3 points where it connects, there's a bolt that would vibrate against the transmission cooler, so I had to make a rubber pad for it. So there's a lot of things you're going to have to do if you do this to a 2011 Xterra. 2011 has quite a few differences between the older models, it looks like. So again, a lot of modifications, expect that. So at this point, we're ready to install the passenger side plastic piece that goes back here in the front next to the headlight. And we're ready to hook up the pump that goes to the heat exchangers, and we'll get all that done and then we'll come back. Okay, so what we've gotten so far is we've done the driver's side here where it connects over to the pump. It's a short hose they give you. Now, as I mentioned earlier, they wanted you to cut a hole here, which would have been very easy, but unfortunately we have an item behind it. So we had to go in between the item and the frame. So we had to route the hose like this. I'll come back later and put some black silicone seal on here, make it look real nice. So it looks professional. They had given us a grommet to put in, but that's not going to work under these conditions. So I'm going to show you how we did the pump, because we had to do some slight modifications as well. So we'll take a picture here on the inside. So here's the intercooler pump, and here's how far we've gotten. As I mentioned, here's a short hose that goes up front. So it's been connected up, but we have the pump sitting up higher in the bracket than what they called for in the instructions. And that's because in order to feed the hose through, we have to feed it up here. Plus our model has horns here. And so this is a 2011 model. And most of Nissan's, the older models, had the horns in the front. So that was another problem. This hose would have interfered with this horn. And so I didn't want to relocate the horns. Plus they didn't give me anything in the kit to do that with. So here's what we've got. We connected the ground wire. I went ahead and extended it slightly and hooked it over to this ground. So that's all good. And then now we're going to finish connecting up this driver's side, but before we do that, I'll show you the passenger side and what we did over there. So here on the passenger side, here's the routing we chose. First of all, you have to cut this elbow down low, and the reason for that is because this air passage has to come through here, and so in order to do that, it's going to come right over this. So in order to keep from squeezing down a line and cutting off the water flow, you have to make this short. And then we also directed it up this way. Now I did fit the metal part they gave me to see how it would do. And sure enough, it does push down on this very slightly, but it's going to give plenty of clearance. And we put in a dowel clamp over here to keep this from rubbing against when the engine moves back and forth. We don't want it to rub the hose here, so we put in a dowel clamp in here. And then again, that leads over to the front passenger side, where we'll show you the connection here in just a second. Okay, so here's the passenger side, and it routes through a hole that's existing where there used to be a line coming through. So now you're going to route it through here, and we tried to make sure there's plenty of clearance so the grill should stick on. We hope that Stillen didn't make any mistakes with this design such that the grill has to be hogged out. I hope not. Hope it'll just pop on into place. So we haven't gotten that far yet, but we'll be there shortly. So I'm going to connect the other hose and hook up the reservoir, and we'll be right back. So we've completed the hose connections for the intercooler, and this is what we came up with. So for the driver's side, we ran it like this because remember we had to put our pump up higher. So we looked at how we believe the line's going to come through here. So we think it's going to go something like this. And if we have to, we'll go get another part and we'll make it so it's down more like this so that it has a good radius. We don't want to bend it like this because it'll get cinched up. So hopefully this will be good. This is the best we could do. The instructions absolutely are missing for this part. So you just have to go with what you got. Also, the instructions don't cover a lot of the things like reconnecting the grounds. So you have to put this reservoir on. So we reconnected some of the grounds, but one of them I'm going to have to extend and find another place to connect it. So I'll worry about that in a couple of days because I'm done for the day. So the other hose from the top of the intercooler down up there goes right here. We routed it around that way. It looks to me like in the book they sort of bring it this way, but that doesn't make sense to me. This makes a much better sense because we're going to have various vacuum lines and items sitting here, so we think this probably makes the most sense. So that's it for this edition, and join us in another week or so when we try to get a little further on this, hopefully get it finished. And so until then, thanks for watching. Tschüss.